Hello and welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. Great to have you in. I'm Eric Chiafalo alongside the Super Bowl champion Brian Broaddus. Cowboys get the victory Monday Night Football, dominant fashion over the Raiders. And now, short week, we already turn our attention here on Thursday, November 20th for these Philadelphia Eagles at home, AT&T Stadium. And the Cowboys are going to be certainly desperate for the win. Hey, we're in the hunt graphic now,
Yeah,
right? When you're looking
absolutely,
at the postseason
in
in
the
the
hunt.
in the NFC. So that's a beautiful thing, but you got to keep this thing moving here. And this is where the schedule starts to get cranked up quite a bit. So it was a nice little confidence booster, nice little tune-up game with the Raiders after the bye week. And now hopefully they're playing with a little bit more confidence here, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Broaddus, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. You're absolutely right. You've actually gone into, we always like to talk about desperate team theory. You're desperate team through the remainder of this season. You had the break. You needed to win against the Raiders. You did. And now you have to play like a desperate team to even get back into this thing. They don't give you very good odds of making the playoffs. We kicked away some games early in the year. But now you're going to have to win some games you probably initially didn't think you could win. But we're at a different point in time of the season now where some teams that you're going to play look somewhat beatable. They don't look like, when you initially thought the schedule coming out, you look at the Eagles record and it's impressive. They've managed to win some games of being very good at the end. They've caught some great breaks. They've made some big plays along the way, but there's games now, like I said, Philadelphia, Kansas City. We'll see what happens with Detroit, but you are now become the desperate team for the rest of the season, and you need to play like that.
Well, looking at the Eagles, they continue to win football games, even though it doesn't, especially offensively, doesn't look overly sexy here. Now they lose Lane Johnson at right tackle. You still have the issues between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. All the rumors are it's basically A.J. Brown doesn't like Jalen Hurts. I mean, I don't have all the details on why, but Deshaun Jackson, all these different people, NFL insiders, it's like they just don't have a good relationship. And I'm sure part of it is because just Jalen Hurts is not the most productive quarterback through the air, certainly this season. And they're having to scrape by with some really good defense. And so we'll take a look at the Eagles defense here in a minute. But Broaddus, what have you seen from this Eagles offense?
Yeah, I went back and watched all of 175 carries of Saquon Barkley to try and get an idea why they are struggling, running the football. Well, especially with him running the football. He's not the explosive player that he was last season. I think the number of carries he had regular season and into the playoffs and the Super Bowl clearly affects his explosiveness, his quickness. They've also dealt with a lot of problems along the offensive line with health. They're going to deal with them again with the Cowboys. Likely their center being out. We'll see. Didn't practice on Wednesday. You mentioned Lane Johnson being out, the right tackle. That puts Fred Johnson into the mix. They've struggled with point of attack blocking with their tight ends. They just haven't been very, very good at it. And Barkley has not had the runs that he had in the past. And, you look at the number of carries of 10 plus yards. I think it's at 16. Hell, it feels like you watch a game and he's got 16 carries of 10 yards or plus in a game. So it has been a problem. You mentioned Hurts. They don't throw the ball. They're not a big drop back team as far as the passing game. They don't, they just don't. That's something they've really leaned on the running game to try and make that work. It hasn't been as successful as it needs to be. But I think a lot of it has to do with, like I say, the quarterback is not always accurate throwing the football. There's some times he misses. In the Detroit game, you watch that. He had some unfortunate drops. When he was accurate, he had guys dropping the ball on him. And so that's been a problem for them. He doesn't throw the ball in the middle of the field. They really run three routes. Their three favorite routes are the go route. Only the Giants run more go routes than these guys, but they're successful at hitting them. But you look at that, the hitch and the slant. And you can understand why Brown has some issues because you could tell, and there's been there's been an analysis about, I could tell what round I was it Chad Ochocinco who came out and said that he could tell what route he's going to run by his alignment. And that's
that was Ocho.
Yeah, it's pretty fair to say. When he's lined up really wide, you're either going to probably get a go route or get a slant. And then when you get him inside or more towards inside the numbers towards the hash, you're probably going to get some kind of hitch. They don't have a lot of routes these guys run. You would think in the past they were a team that ran a ton of those crossing routes and stuff that, that they've gone to be mid-pack when it's come to the crossing routes. It's been a problem for them to complete passes on crossing routes. They've tend to run a lot of the rub routes. We've known that in the past. That's something the Eagles have always been very, very good at. They'll run you through traffic, and then they'll find a way to come out on the other side. So you definitely have to be ready for that. But they just don't drop back. They just don't drop back and throw the ball like we've seen a lot of other teams. And then they've got a running back that is struggling with his explosiveness, and they're struggling with the health of their offensive line.
Okay, so based on what you saw Monday night in Vegas with the Cowboys defense, how optimistic are you at being able to slow these guys down?
Well, you know what? Like I said, if it turns into Brett Tooth, I think I'm saying his last name right. If he gets into the game at center, watching all those runs of Saquon Barkley, he is a liability as a center. He doesn't play with power. He's not particularly strong at the point of attack. You've got guys in Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark did play in week 1, against the Eagles. I thought he was okay in that game. But, you got Quinnen Williams. You got with the linebacking situation being different now, you're a little bit better equipped to handle things, against this Philadelphia Eagle offensive line. They've struggled a little bit with Landon Dickerson, especially when he's been one-on-one in pass blocking situations. When he gets double team help, he's effective. So there's been some issues across this line. Like I said, they're going to have to replace a couple guys. Usually we talk about the Eagles being the best offensive line in the league. For a long time they have. They're very well coached with Jeff Southland as their coach, but they're now going to back up guys who have had some issues throughout the season. And some of the ineffectiveness that they've had is due to the fact that these guys are having to play. And so, and even Jordan Mailata is giving up some pressures, and he's, Jordan Mailata is a pain to deal with. I know that Donovan Ezeraku in week 1 learned that firsthand. So, it's a different group than what you faced in week 1. It's different the way they attack you. They've struggled a little bit at times, but they've managed to win these games.
Yeah, they have, because they have a really, really good defense that is starting to click. And I know we'll look at that here in a few minutes, but trading for Jalen Phillips was big for them.
It was very big. Yeah.
Getting Nakobe Dean back off of injury. He's playing some really good football at the linebacker spot. Quinyon Mitchell, we'll get into it. But so they play really good defense, and then they take care of the football for as sloppy as some of these numbers are on this Eagles offense, and they're sloppy. I'll give you a couple examples. They do a couple of things really well offensively, and that is, one, they take care of the football. I mean, they will punt the heck out of the ball, but they're not turning the ball over. What'd you say? Jalen Hurts has 1 interception this year?
Yeah, I went back and I was just curious, just looking at his stats. I was seeing how quickly that excuse me just a second here while I grab some water here. I'm just
no problem. No problem. Yeah, they take care of the ball.
But they're in a situation where I was looking at the interceptions, and I said, okay, I have the ability to pull the plays that I want to watch. And I said, give me all Jalen Hurts interceptions. And all of a sudden, one play came up against the Giants. And I went, wait a minute, give me all the Jalen Hurts interceptions. One play against the Giants. That's all he's had. He's had 1 interception this year. So he's doing a much better job of protecting the football. And when he You're absolutely right. They don't look as a punt as a bad situation. They're one of these teams that's kind of in that mode. I think on the G-Bag Nation yesterday, you ran off a stat of something like when you look at 3-and-out offenses, they're one of the top teams in the league when it comes to 3-and-out offense. And, they're not afraid to punt. They'll go play defense and, get the ball back and try and drive from there. So, yeah, it's team that's not going to turn it over. You just got to be ready. When you do get an overthrow or you get a situation where they do put the ball on the ground, you got to take full advantage of that if you can.
Yeah, 31% of the time. That is the rate which the Eagles offense goes 3-and-out. That is the highest rate in football. Somehow they still manage to be 8-2. So they do punt a lot because they're going 3-and-out at the highest rate in the league. Now, what they do well, when they get into the red zone, they convert a league high 75% of their red zone trips into touchdowns. So that's the big thing. And then I know defensively, they're really good at keeping out of the end zone in the red zone.
Yeah, but it's interesting, and you talk about we'll throw numbers out there and stuff. And I pulled this one yesterday. I don't mean to nerd out on people, but I think it always tells the story. The Eagles offense has made a trip to the red zone on just 23% of their drives this season.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fourth lowest rate in the NFL, only ahead of the Browns, the Jets, and the Titans, who collectively only have 5 wins. And they say this figure is due in part to their inability to stay on schedule on snaps outside the red zone. Of their 40% success rate on success rate ranks third lowest in the NFL, only ahead of the Titans, the Browns. However, when they reach the red zone, to your point, they've scored a touchdown on the highest rate in the NFL, 75%. So when they struggle to get there, but when they get there, they're going to punish you for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always the interesting numbers. Yes, they're third lowest in the league in success rate and when it gets in the reds and they getting to the red zone or success in the red zone. But then when they reach, they have the touchdown rate goes to 75%. So that's impressive. Yeah. You don't get there much, but their ability to finish drives has been very impressive.
Yeah, I think that's like when you're looking at these Eagles right now, you're just looking at like how are they winning football games? They're doing it with defense, they're doing it with taking care of the football, and they're doing it with making you pay once they do get into the red zone. Like that's really, those are the 3 reasons why they're winning, because there's so many other things about their offense. I mean, they're 29th in the league in converting third downs. They're number 1 at going 3-and-out. It's just not very good. And then when you look at like where they're at with Lane Johnson off the field, and he's one of the best, if not the best in the league still to this day, has been for a long time at right tackle. I mean, the Eagles have run 153 plays without Lane Johnson on the field this season, and they're averaging 4.2 yards per play on those snaps. That would rank ahead of only the Browns on the season. Yeah. This comes courtesy of Sharp Football Analysis. And with Lane Johnson on the field, they're 5.5 yards per play, which is 14th in the league. So it's not like they're totally dominating and in the top 5 with him there, but they totally bottom out when he's not there. Same with like Hurts completion percentage, only 58% when Lane Johnson's off the field, under 7 yards per pass attempt. That's 33rd and 22nd on the season if they were for the full season there. So, I mean, that's a great opportunity right now for the Cowboys, not having Lane Johnson in this game, and hopefully the pass rush and the run defense, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the run defense, I know it was the Raiders, and so you take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt. That's a god-awful offensive line. But, I mean, the Cowboys' run defense was on fire on Monday night, and especially in the first half, the pass rush looked great.
Yeah, the pass rush was outstanding, and but we went into that game understanding that was probably, and we talked about this a bunch on our various platforms, that the Raiders' offensive line was the worst that they were going to play this year, or up until this point, and the 5 guys across the board, it it clearly bared out for that.
Yeah, I saw from Tommy Yarish and Next Gen Stats against the Raiders, the Cowboys defense did not allow a single rushing yard before contact.
Yeah.
All 27 of the Raiders rushing yards came after contact. That is I mean, I think that speaks to really just how bad the Raiders are. And I was made sad for Ashton Genty watching that game. You know, one of the first times you really get to sit down and just watch the entirety of a Raiders game. And man, Genty's just got nowhere to go.
No.
One other thing to mention here when it comes to the Eagles offense, and we saw this play out in the first game with the Cowboys playing so much zone. I know we've been a little bit frustrated throughout the year with how much zone the Cowboys played defensively, but versus the Eagles and slowing down A.J. Brown, I mean, that is absolutely your best bet, because versus man coverage, his yards per route run is second in the league behind only Jackson Smith and Jigba there in Seattle, who's having a great season. But when it's versus zone coverage, A.J. Brown, he's 59th out of wide receivers in the league when it comes to yards per route run versus zone coverage. And I think that's not really an A.J. Brown stat. I think that's more of a Jalen Hurts stat. So that plays right into the Cowboys' hands. Like when you go up against Mahomes, I think that'll be a different story on Thanksgiving. You'll be going, man, please don't be running a bunch of zone versus Mahomes, because he will pick you apart. But for a game like this versus Jalen Hurts, the Cowboys, they should have the recipe here.
Yeah, this is one of those things too that there's a couple of different ways that you have to kind of figure out, you know, how do you want to handle Jalen Hurts as far as, you know, how do you want to play zone? Do you want to blitz him? You know, and it's one of those things where only Lamar Jackson has been blitzed more this season. And, you know, teams are right at 36% blitz rate against him, which again is the second highest in the league. But this is where Hurts can kind of kill you, because Hurts surpassed his previous season-long career high of 9 touchdowns against the blitz through the first 8 weeks, and currently ranks second in the NFL with 11 such touchdowns entering week 12. So teams have got to be very mindful about him, and especially when you do blitz him, it seems like that Devonta Smith has been the guy that he targets the most. Those numbers will tell you the 21 of 28 for 299 and a touchdown, and that's the fourth most when you start to talk about receiver quarterback duos in the league. So, you know, if you're going to blitz him, make sure that you got Smith covered on the play, because likely that's where the football is going to go. But the zone coverage stuff has actually been pretty good. Teams have played a fair amount of zone, but not to the point that we've seen other opponents that have done it. I guess they try and blitz this guy. I've always kind of felt like that you play with this guy's eye level. You try and change the picture for him in the secondary, and that seems to work the best when he has to. He holds the ball longer than anybody in the league when it comes to this kind of stuff, you know, and the longer he holds it, sometimes it's a problem. He'll just throw it away. There was a time where he used to throw interceptions, you know, but now he'll just throw it away. But, you know, he'll hold the ball, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, he'll, you know, work himself into some sacks too. So, you know, how you play your coverage, blitzing him speeds him up. And I don't know necessarily if that's the best thing to do, playing this guy.
All right, you're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast, presented by the On Time Experts, the official AC heating and plumbing of the Love of the Star podcast, as well as the Dallas Cowboys and the Dallas Stars. They truly are the best in the business. And all we ask you to do here on Love of the Stars is just support the people that support this show. Call on the On Time Experts. They'll come to your home the same day, backed by their Stay Warm guarantee. Visit the ontimeexperts.com. Click the Book Now button, and you will pay less over time, because they correctly diagnose your issue and fix it right the first time. Same day or you don't pay policy for certain repairs. 100% satisfaction guarantee. No excuses, no exceptions. On Time Experts, they are the best in the business. All right, Broadus, let's go ahead and look at this Eagles defense. And of course, you got our guy Dick Fangio coming into town, and you have Jalen Phillips now on the edge, Nakobe Dean back at linebacker, Quinyon Mitchell playing out of his mind, and I don't imagine that Jalen Carter is going to spit on Dak Prescott before the game and get himself booted. So what are we in for here with this Eagles defense?
Yeah, I think that and you mentioned this earlier when you were talking about the Eagles and some of the additions they've made, and we'll see. Of course, you're going to see Carter and Phillips, or excuse me, Carter and Davis, the inside. That will be a problem, and but Dallas, I think the first time around handled the situation very, very well in that football game. If you look at the way that they were able to run the ball and where they were able to attack, they did a really, really nice job. I think Zach Bond is a very good linebacker. You mentioned Nakobe Dean as part of this. I mean, does a really nice job. The first time that these two teams played, it was rookie Jahad Campbell who made the start, but Dean's back in the lineup. I mentioned about Phillips and the trade and Jalen Phillips. He's made a difference for this football team, and I think he's made a difference in a way that they were struggling a little bit initially with some of their pass rush, but you look at with him now and how he was playing well. I remember watching some tape before the trade deadline. I thought he was a guy that I'd be willing to have traded for him if I was the Cowboys, if they were on that path, because I think he's given the Eagles some pass rush. He's given them, if you watch him in the games that he's played, the Packers, the Lions, those games, he's done a really nice job of coming off that edge and making things happen and affecting the quarterback, breaking down tackles. I'll tell you, he's actually been pretty good in the run game too. It was like you run the ball his direction. He does a really good job of fighting the tackles, setting that edge. He fights tight ends. You just can't throw a tight end at him and think, oh, wow, he's going to be able to, this tight end's going to handle him.
Mm-hmm.
He'll disengage tackles. He'll disengage tight ends. He sets that edge well. So if the ball's going to his side, he has that ability to make plays. But he is a slippery pass rusher. The way that he goes about it. So, tip of the cap to the Eagles. They identified an area that they hadn't been very, very good at. Well, I say not very good at, but they'd had some struggles, and they said, "Listen, we've got to go out and get a guy that could." They got a complete player in Phillips, but they've got some really good players on defense. That Quinton Mitchell at corner is really, really, really good. And you look at him and you say, okay, well, where else can you attack? Cooper DeJean has played very well as a nickel. It seemed like that Adoree Jackson, the last time these two teams met, they went after Adoree Jackson in this game. I would anticipate him and Bennett, the two corners that they use. You really do want to stay away from Quinton Mitchell. You really, really do. He is this tight window. You watch the Green Bay game, Detroit game. He is a tight window corner. I mean, there's not a lot of space, throwing the football on him. So I would plan to maybe go after the others and try and stay away from him in this game.
Yeah, I mean, he's given up 42% completion percentage when targeted this year, which according to Next Gen, that's the lowest mark since 2018. So, I mean, he is playing super sticky, dominant coverage. And I mean, it's interesting when you have a quarterback like Dak, when you have receivers like Pickens and Lamb, it's like, do I really want to play scared here? But I do think that you want to be attacking other dudes.
Yeah, just to give you an example, just a note that I got was Quinton Mitchell was matched up with George Pickens, and this is week 1. We kind of we had an idea what George Pickens was at training camp, but I think we see George Pickens in a completely different light.
Yes.
But Quinton Mitchell matched up with George Pickens 18 times in week 1. He allowed just 2 receptions for 15 yards across 3 targets that he faced in coverage. Pickens caught his only other target for a gain of 15 yards, resulting in a 12.5% target rate overall. That was the lowest game since week 18 in 2023 against the Ravens. So they've also said that Mitchell shadowed Pickens during the first half with 15 of his 18 matchups coming against Pickens for 2 quarters. But then the Eagles adjusted at halftime after CeeDee Lamb took advantage of the other matchups in the first half. And then because Lamb, as we mentioned, I'm just reading here some of my notes. Lamb was targeted 5 of 7 matchups against Adoree Jackson in that game, hauling in 3 receptions for 72 yards. Lamb found less success against Mitchell with just 1 reception for 13 yards on 4 targets across 9 matchups, and failed to catch his only target against Cooper DeJean in 3 matchups. So you could see that if Vic Fangio gets in trouble, he's going to move Quentin Mitchell around in order to try and keep you from hurting him. But now you've got this great connection between Pickens and Dak Prescott, and now throw Lamb in there. Now he's going to have to be, there's probably going to be some mix and match. One time he might go, Vic Fangio might be guessing, okay, they're going to go to Lamb. The next time they're going to go to Pickens. Maybe there's going to be, he's got to just determine which guy at what situation he wants to try and take out. But that, like I say, George Pickens is a completely different player now than what we saw in week 1.
Yes. Yeah. George Pickens is as electric as any player in the league right now. I mean, watching him is so freaking fun. His dominance seems like it really knows no bounds at this point. Like after the catch, what he's been able to do, I think it was 77 yards after the catch on Monday night.
Yeah, in that game. Yeah, he was 77. Yeah.
I mean, he's on pace right now for the 17-game season. He's on pace for
1,500 yards.
Yeah, 99 catches, over 1,500 yards, and 12 touchdowns. That's what he's on pace for right now. Yeah. So he's ridiculous. What do you think, by the way, of the way Shoddy handled it with Lamb and Pickens showing up late and being out in Vegas and sitting him in the first series? Were you a fan of that?
I mean, we're going to sit there and act like that was a big disciplinary move. I give Shoddy credit. He realizes that he needs those guys to win games. He could have said, okay, neither one of you are going to play this week. And then the question would have been, and then you lose the game, say you were going to go out and lose that game because you didn't have 2 of your better players, then all of a sudden now that looks bad on them, like that they were that selfish that they cost them a win. I think Shoddy knew what he needed to do. Listen, that's a difficult situation to put your coach in right there. That you don't care enough about a curfew that he sets and bed checks and, focusing on the game and all that you just go ahead and say, listen, I'm bigger and better than this, that I'm going to go out and do. I'm not trying to be, a guy that, is trying to be so critical of these guys, but you talk about building culture would have been neither one of you were going to play this week. That would have been a bigger move, but he did what he thought was right. I'm not going to question the coach on that, but you go out there and neither one of those guys play and they lose that game. Now your teammates kind of look at each other and like, well, bro, why did you put yourself ahead of the team? Why did you do that? That if he would have suspended both of them for the full game, that was a bigger culture move than anything else he could have done.
Yeah, that would have been the ultimate laying the hammer down.
Well, you lay the hammer and you might win the game. You might win the game. You might still win the game without those players, but I think it would have been hard. You look at the team, the way they played, the numbers, it was clearly those 2 guys were a big, big, big factor in why you won the football game. And I get it. I'm not questioning Shoddy's. I'm just saying though, if you as a head coach would have said neither one of you are playing because you don't respect me as the head coach and the rules I have, so I'm going to discipline you in that way. Like I said, go out and lose that football game. Your teammates, your players look at those 2 guys differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's and that could have been Schottenheimer standing up there in the podium, potentially after a loss and gone, you know what? I suspended both of these guys for the game because they broke team rules. They were out after curfew. We didn't have contact with them. We tried to find contact with them. We couldn't get a hold of them. They put themselves ahead of the team today. So, that could have been the podium speech, but it wasn't. It was, ha ha, and take that, and it's between coach and I and all that. I think he knew he needed those guys to win a football game, and sitting them a series makes them almost laugh and almost gives them the, you know what, man, it was worth it. What we did was worth it. It was worth it.
That's interesting.
I think you put that feeling in the mind. And what you've also done is you've allowed other players, and listen, I'm sorry I'm on this soapbox right now.
No, it's good.
But you you basically made it a joke to your team that if you go out on a road trip and go have a great time and don't focus on actually the game and the job in hand and the task in hand, then you've basically told him that you've told the team that you can get away with that. Because if you're a good enough player, I'm just going to suspend you for the first series of the game. You go out and suspend them and lose that game. It is a totally different look. It's not ha ha. To CD and Pickens, it was for us to only not miss a series. Man, it was totally worth staying out all night. Kind of sends a bad message, I think.
Wow. Well, that's a different perspective because I thought, yes, it is ultimately what the punishment was kind of a slap on the wrist. But I felt like because it was Monday Night Football and all eyes were there and this became a big story, like you would like to think that it would be embarrassing for those guys.
It wasn't. It wasn't.
And that's tough. Wasn't. And that's tough. And if it happens again, I would imagine the punishment would be a heck of a lot larger for those two individuals because you crossed me once. Okay, slap on the wrist. Hopefully that's enough to wake you up here a little bit. But if not, that second one's going to come with the hammer.
Well, you've opened it up for others to potentially do the same. If you're only suspending me for the first series of the game, you're basically opening it up for Ravel or anybody, Wilson, whoever you want, Quinnen Williams. You're opening it up for, well, if he's only going to suspend me for the first series, I'm going to sit out here all night and shoot some dice and talk to people and have some cocktails.
Yeah. That's where you need to have some just higher character players. I would like to think there's guys in that locker room going, man, that's embarrassing. Like I wouldn't want the graphic of CD Lamb that's going viral right now about how he was seen vomiting in a casino at 7:30 in the morning on the day of the game. Like that's embarrassing. That should stick with you. You're a grown man. You should not. Yeah. You're not 15 years old. This isn't ha ha ha. That should absolutely.
I'm just no way. Listen, I'm not trying to be holier than thou here. I'm all about having fun and all that. I just feel like, though, to me, if he would have suspended him, it would have been a bigger story and right now it's kind of a laughing little joke is what it is. He jumps over there and hugs him and all that. And after the fact, like, haha, look he kind of acknowledges the fact that you two went out and had a great time and look at you scoring touchdowns. I just think that it opens up a door for other things to happen. But if you go out and lose that football game and they're not on the field, that's a bigger message. And that's something that means a lot more than what happened in that game. So I'll leave it at that, man. Like I said, they were fortunate that they were playing the Raiders, and they're fortunate they're fortunate that the head coach didn't really lay the hammer on them. But right now, as CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens sit, hey, man, like 10 years, 15 years from now, they could tell the story about how they went out and got drunk and had a good time in Vegas the night before a game and lit the Raiders up. It'll be a fun story one day.
All right, you're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Presented by the On Time Experts, the official AC heating and plumbing partner of the Love of the Star podcast, the Dallas Cowboys and the Dallas Stars. They truly are top tier here in the DFW. Call on the On Time Experts and they'll come to your home the same day. And it's backed by their Stay Warm guarantee. Visit the ontimeexperts.com. Click the Book Now button. You will pay less over time because they correctly diagnose your issue and fix it right the first time. They have a proven track record with thousands of happy customers. I've seen it here in my own neighborhood. My neighbors, hey, you got an issue, I know exactly who to call. And they do a bang-up job every single time. Locally trusted with years of experience serving the community. Transparent pricing, no surprise add-ons or hidden fees. Friendly background check technicians you'll feel comfortable having in your home. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. No excuses, no exceptions. Same day or you don't pay policy for certain repairs. The ontimeexperts.com. All right, Broadus, let's go ahead and dip into the Dean Julia mailbag, my friend. And yeah, we got plenty of questions. We'll start with Brandon Laurie, our buddy from Blogging the Boys. He says he's thinking outside the box here with Lane Johnson missing the game. Would you how much mixing and matching would you do going up against Fred Johnson? Would you even try and put like Quinnen Williams on the edge, maybe in certain situations to maximize that matchup?
No, I think you could probably win it with the edges you have. I'm going to focus inside on some stuff with Quinnen. I'm going to try and see if I can get him one-on-one with Landon Dickerson. That's what my game plan is going to be, because Landon Dickerson, when he gets double team help, we said this early, he's a much better guard, but his pressure rate and his sack rate go up quite a bit when he's one-on-one with linemen. So I'm taking one of my most powerful guys and I'm going at him. Matter of fact, Tyler Steen is a guy that doesn't always play with power. In week one, we were kind of talking about that might be the weak link along here. But I think Steen's played a little bit better for him. But I'm trying to get Landon Dickerson one-on-one because I feel like that's the quickest way to get to Jalen Hurts is through the middle of that pocket. We talked about bringing eye level down and kind of taking care of him. Win in the middle. They did a really great job of that against the Raiders last week.
Okay, Starlin is asking the question, considering the amount of roster juggling that has happened due to returning players, would you, and we saw it with Damone Clark, who was waived and actually picked up by the Houston Texans, but would you reconsider CJ Goodwin's roster spot in the future, or does his special teams value warrant it?
I've been trying to move on from CJ Goodwin for years, and I've learned not to even try it anymore. He had a sponsor in Bones Fossil. Evidently he has a sponsor in Nick Sorensen now. He might have a sponsor in the front office. He might have a sponsor that with people, maybe the Will McClay, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones. There might be sponsors there. So I think the roster spots now are going to come down to, and by the way, they've only got 2 moves left that they can make. And how many games do we have left here? 7, 8 games left. Mm-hmm. So, if they're going to make roster moves because of bringing players back, now there's some players that don't fall under the, there's some players that are non-football injuries and guys like that, Butler, I think, is one of those guys. But if you're on that reserved injury category, then they have to make that'd be one of the moves, 2 moves they have left. All the other categories, but you could just bring them off and on. So they have some considerations that they have to absolutely think about going forward. And I believe they're out of roster moves for Malik Davis, the running back. He's been elevated 3 times. And so now if you want to use him, you have to put him on the active roster. If not, he has to stay on the practice squad. So, what's going to happen with with Jadon Blue, what's going to happen with Phil Maffa. Phil Maffa, I think he's in a different category too. So, those are all possibilities. But if you're looking at Malik Davis to bring back against Philadelphia, you're going to have to put him on the roster and kick somebody off.
All right, our buddy KJ Wright asking the question: who is Revel's best matchup this weekend? Would it be one of the tight ends?
Kind of felt like that he was. I've called him the hybrid killer. He had a couple of matches it's a very, 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 very small sample size. His length, his ability to change direction, his strength, all positives when dealing with these athletic tight ends, these hybrid tight ends. When you look at Dallas Goedert, when you look at Travis Kelce, to the point Detroit's not going to be playing with LaPointe, Laporta. I said LaPointe, Laporta, right?
Yeah.
And so they're not going to be playing with him. I was thinking of Mitch LaPointe, the scout, for some stupid reason. But yeah, Laporta, there's these hybrid tight ends that you're going to kind of deal with. We saw him last week get a couple of reps. Maybe he's this guy because of his, or maybe it's one of those things where you want to, if you have other ideas, if you know that they're just going to run slants and hitches and go routes, maybe you have other ideas of where you want to play him. If you want to put him on somebody like an AJ Brown that's got more, that's got size to him, then that's there's all kinds of possibilities. It's going to be more challenging for both him and Carson this week than it was last week, but they're off to a pretty good start.
Okay, what about the from Robert DiCenzo? How has Tyler Smith been looking the last couple of weeks, and Tyler Guyton as well on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think Smith is struggling through the knee problem. I think there's been times where you could clearly see that if you go back and you look at the sack that was given up in the Raider game, and it was unfortunate that they get the big loop, with Max Crosby, the big loop, but here's Smith kind of trying to block two guys, really doesn't block either of them. He gets turned, he can't move. Crosby comes behind him and then chases down Dak, gets the sack, fumble, and all that stuff. That's been a little bit of some issues for Smith. I think the knee clearly is bothering him. He's at times he's outstanding, but there's other times you could see how limited his movement and his power has been because of some of the injuries that he's having to deal with right now.
Mason Johnson asking the question here in the mailbag: what are the chances we re-sign George Pickens, and if we do, will we be able to improve our defense in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to tag. I think they're going to tag George Pickens. That gives them the flexibility. Yeah, it's probably going to cost them somewhere between 28 and 30 million right on the cap, but it gives them the flexibility to be able to work to try and get a deal, maybe make a trade if they want to, but it gives them some controls. Dealing with the agent, I think we'll see what happens, with David Mulugeta is the agent. We went through that whole thing with Micah Parsons. It might be a different thing. Let's not just immediately say it's Mulugeta and it's going to be a kick in the junk thing. Let's see how this all plays out. Maybe George Pickens is different than Micah Parsons, and he wants to say, hey, get the deal done. Find a way to get it done. I want to be here, get it done. Where maybe Micah was not that kind of guy, and there was a lot of back and forth between him and Jerry Jones. So, yes, to me, I think Dallas could still be aggressive in free agency and maybe grab a guy or two, which they absolutely need to look at a corner, or not a corner maybe, but linebacker. And I think linebacker and safety is clearly in play. I would love to go into this draft with those first two picks and not have to be tethered to they've got to get a defensive player. I don't want to. I want to have flexibility that if the best offensive player, the best defensive players on that board, and it's somebody that can help this football team win games, that needs to be the thing. But only through free agency can you do that and give yourself that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should have great options. Like there is no excuse. You've seen plenty of teams now, the Eagles being one of them, Detroit being another one, and other teams have tried it, but they misevaluated some of the players, and so they haven't been able to be good teams. But as long as you're evaluating the talent appropriately, you can maneuver things if you want to on the salary cap. It is very, very fungible. And I mean, go look at Detroit's roster right now. Look at the amount of guys that they've paid. Just look at the amount of guys that they've paid, and you can't sit here and tell me that it's impossible. So there are ways to do it, and if the Cowboys are committed to capitalizing on, the later years of Jerry Jones, if they're trying to capitalize on this Dak window, which right now he's obviously played great football this year for the most part, and you have him for the next few years, this needs to be the time where when you like, I know these are buzzwords that we hate, but like actually going all in this Dak window right now, I think has to be the move. George Pickens has to be a part of that, and putting a quality defense on the field has to be a part of that. You have those 2 first-round picks. We'll see how they maneuver them. We'll see if they want to trade down, get some more, whatever it is. But they will have plenty of options here, and we have to hold the Cowboys' feet to the fire to actually go about doing that. They can't be cranking up the excuse machine about, we paid George Pickens, so we can't do anything else. That's a bogus joke. And so hopefully they understand just how important it is right now to really build around what you have. You talk about, Tony Romo not winning a Super Bowl with him is a huge regret. You're about to make that same mistake right now with Dak Prescott. But you still have a chance. You still have a chance to go ahead and remedy that situation. Being aggressive, it's very, very possible. So I hope they do that. And George Pickens at this point is a must. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But my gosh, man, he is totally electric. Still a little bit immature for sure, but the dude's as dominant as any receiver in the league right now. So got to keep this thing together and got to build the defense. There's no doubt about it. And then, by the way, we had a couple of questions about spying Jalen Hurts. Anything on spying Jalen Hurts?
Well, you got a guy in Overshown that can clearly run with him. And Overshown, you clearly can run with him. I don't know how much. I think you saw some of that against the Commanders early, maybe, but now you actually have a guy that can run somebody down. And so, Jalen Hurts needs to be alert about Overshown, because Overshown was a nightmare the last time they faced off.
Yeah, AT&T Stadium last year, Overshown and Micah were giving these guys some serious fits. All right, that'll do it for the mailbag, and that'll do it for this episode of the Love of the Star podcast presented by the On Time Experts. I'm Eric Chiafalo. He's the Super Bowl champion, Brian Broaddus. Thank you so much for giving us some time today. We appreciate you very much. Like, subscribe, review, send to your friends. All the wall-to-wall Cowboys content that you can stomach is right here on the Love of the Star podcast. We greatly appreciate you, and we'll be back on Friday or Saturday to get you the full game preview and get you set for a Sunday kickoff. Cowboys, Eagles, AT&T Stadium. Eagles favored by 3.5. Just throwing that out there. Eagles favored by 3.5 as a road favorite. All right, that'll do it for us. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you this weekend.